She thought she was untouchable. Brenda Miller, a flight attendant with 20 years of experience and a heart made of stone, looked at a 12-year-old girl pleading for her life and decided to play God. She snatched the bottle of life-saving heart medication from Maya's trembling hands, threw the pills to the floor, and crushed them under her heel. She thought it was just another power trip against a helpless passenger. She was wrong. Dead wrong. Because the man sitting in the cockpit, the man gripping the throttle, wasn't just the captain. He was Maya's father. And 10 seconds later, the engines didn't roar to life. They shut down. The fluorescent lights of John F. Kennedy International Airport hummed with the manic energy of the holiday season. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows of Terminal 4, rain lashed against the glass, blurring the flashing lights of the tarmac vehicles. It was a miserable night to fly, but for Flight 808 bound for London Heathrow, the schedule was king. Inside the cabin of the massive Boeing 777, the air was already stale, smelling of recycled coffee and sanitizer. Brenda Miller stood at the entrance of the aircraft, her smile plastered on like a decal. She was the senior purser, the head flight attendant, and she wore her gold wings like a sheriff's badge. Brenda was 48, with hair sprayed into an immobile blonde helmet and eyes that scanned every passenger, not for safety threats, but for annoyances. She hated the holiday rush. She hated the families with crying babies, the tourists with oversized carry-ons, and most of all, she hated anyone who disrupted her routine. "Boarding pass, please. Aisle 3, to your right," Brenda droned, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness that didn't reach her cold, blue eyes. A young girl stepped onto the plane. Maya Sterling was 12 years old, though she looked younger. She was small for her age, with deep cocoa skin and large, expressive eyes that currently held a shimmer of anxiety. She wore a neat navy blue dress, white tights, and a thick woolen coat. Clutched tightly against her chest was a small, worn leather backpack. Maya was traveling alone in the cabin. It wasn't her first time flying, but it was her first time flying without her mother sitting right next to her. Her mother, Elena Sterling, had passed away 3 years ago. Since then, it had just been Maya and her dad. "Boarding pass!" Brenda snapped, her patience already fraying as the line behind Maya stalled. Maya fumbled with her phone, her hands shaking slightly. Sorry, Mum, it's loading." Brenda rolled her eyes, making a show of checking her watch. "We don't have all day, sweetie. Step aside if you can't work your technology." "I have it," Maya whispered, holding up the QR code. Brenda snatched the phone from the girl's hand, scanned it aggressively, and shoved it back. "Seat 4A, first class." Brenda paused, her eyebrows knitting together as she looked at the girl's outfit and the worn backpack. "You sure you're in the right line? Economy is back that way." "My dad booked the seat," Maya said softly. "It's 4A." Brenda scoffed, a short, sharp sound of disbelief. "Right. Go on then, and don't block the aisle." As Maya hurried past, keeping her head down, Brenda leaned toward her colleague, a younger flight attendant named Sarah Jenkins. "Unbelievable," Brenda muttered, loud enough for the first few rows to hear. "Upgrade policies are a joke these days. They let anyone in up front." Sarah, who was arranging water bottles on a tray, looked uncomfortable. "She's just a kid, Brenda. Maybe she's an unaccompanied minor." "She's a nuisance," Brenda corrected, smoothing her uniform. "I can smell trouble. Watch her. I bet she starts asking for freebies before we even push back." Maya found seat 4A. It was a wide, comfortable leather recliner by the window. She sat down, feeling swallowed by the size of it. She placed her backpack on her lap, her fingers tracing the zipper. Inside was the most important thing she owned, a small amber prescription bottle containing her digoxin tablets. Maya had been born with a congenital heart defect. It was managed, but fragile. The stress of travel, the altitude changes, and the anxiety often triggered arrhythmias. She needed to take her medication at strict intervals. Her watch beeped. 7:15 p.m. Time for her dose. She unzipped her bag and took out the bottle. Her mouth was dry, parched from the rush through security and the dry cabin air. She needed water to swallow the pill. They were large and bitter, and she had a sensitive gag reflex. Maya looked around. The flight attendants were busy herding passengers into their seats. She saw the younger one, Sarah, rushing past with a stack of blankets. Maya was too shy to stop her. Then she saw Brenda. The senior attendant was standing just a few feet away, reorganizing the galley cart with aggressive precision. "Excuse me?" Maya said, her voice small. Brenda ignored her, slamming a drawer shut. "Excuse me, ma'am?" Maya tried a little louder. Brenda spun around, her face tight. "What? The seatbelt sign is not on yet. But you need to stay seated. We are boarding." "I know," Maya said, holding up the orange pill bottle. I need a cup of water, please. I need to take my medicine." Brenda stared at the bottle, then at Maya. A cruel smirk played on her lips. To Brenda, this was exactly what she had predicted. A demand, a disruption. "Water services after takeoff," Brenda said icily. "Read the safety card." "But it's time now," Maya pleaded, her heart rate already beginning to tick upward, a fluttery sensation in her chest that she knew too well. "I have to take it at 7 exactly. My doctor said—" "I don't care what your doctor said," Brenda interrupted, stepping closer, looming over the child. "We are in the middle of boarding 300 people. I cannot stop to fetch a distinct cup of premium water for one child who thinks she's special because she got a lucky upgrade. Sit down and wait." "I can't wait," Maya said, panic rising. "Please, just a little bit." Brenda's eyes narrowed. She saw the passengers in row 5 watching. A businessman in 5C, Mr. Robert Thorne, was looking over the top of his newspaper. Brenda felt the need to assert her authority. She couldn't let a child dictate the flow of her cabin. "Put the bottle away," Brenda commanded. "No," Maya said, her hand trembling. "I need water." "I said put it away," Brenda snapped. She reached out and grabbed the bottle from Maya's hand. "Hey!" Maya cried out, reaching for it. "Give it back! That's my heart medicine." "Heart medicine?" Brenda laughed, a harsh, barking sound. "You're 12. You don't have heart problems. I know what this is. Probably some ADHD pills or something you're addicted to. We don't allow unverified narcotics to be consumed openly during boarding." "It's digoxin!" Maya shouted, tears welling in her eyes. The fluttering in her chest was becoming a thumping, erratic rhythm. "Please give it back." By now the commotion had stopped the boarding process. People were staring. Sarah, the younger attendant, rushed over. "Brenda, what's going on?" Sarah asked, looking alarmed. "This brat is causing a scene over some pills," Brenda sneered, holding the bottle out of Maya's reach, refusing to follow crew instructions. "She said it's for her heart." Mr. Thorne from seat 5C spoke up, his voice deep and authoritative. "Just give the kid some water, Brenda. It takes 2 seconds. "Stay out of this, sir," Brenda warned him. "This is a flight safety issue. If she can't control herself on the ground, she's a liability in the air." Brenda looked down at Maya, who was now gasping slightly, clutching her chest. To Brenda it looked like bad acting, a tantrum. "You want your pills?" Brenda hissed, leaning in close so only Maya could hear. "You think you can embarrass me in my cabin? You think you own this plane?" "My dad," Maya gasped. Tell the captain." "The captain is busy flying the plane, you little liar," Brenda spat. With a sudden, violent motion, Brenda uncapped the bottle. "Brenda, don't!" Sarah shouted, reaching out. It was too late. Brenda turned the bottle upside down and shook it. The small white tablets cascaded onto the dirty grey carpet of the airplane aisle. They scattered under seats and were crushed under the boots of boarding passengers. Maya screamed. It wasn't a scream of anger. It was a scream of pure, terrified devastation. She dropped to her knees, frantically trying to scoop up the pills, but they were dusty, broken, and contaminated. "Oops," Brenda said, her face devoid of emotion. "Looks like you lost them. Now sit down and shut up, or I will have security drag you off this plane." Maya looked up at Brenda, her eyes wide with shock. Her chest was tightening, a vice grip around her heart. She couldn't breathe. The stress of the confrontation had triggered exactly what the medicine was supposed to prevent. Brenda turned on her heel, satisfied. She dusted her hands off and looked at Sarah. "Clean that mess up. We push back in 5 minutes." Brenda marched toward the front galley, grabbed the interphone, and buzzed the cockpit. "Cabin is secure, Captain," she said smoothly into the receiver. "Ready for pushback." She thought it was over. She thought she had won. In the cockpit, Captain Marcus Sterling adjusted his headset. He was a man of few words, a former Air Force ace with a reputation for absolute precision. He checked the instrument panel, his gloved hands moving with practiced ease. "Copy that, cabin," Marcus said, his voice deep and calm. "Prepare for departure." He didn't know yet. He didn't know that 20 feet behind him, his only daughter was grasping at the carpet, gasping for air, her life-saving medication destroyed by the woman he had just spoken to. But the universe has a way of balancing scales, and inside the cabin, Mr. Robert Thorne, in seat 5C, had seen enough. He unbuckled his seatbelt. He wasn't just a businessman, he was a retired federal judge, and he knew a crime when he saw one. But more importantly, Sarah Jenkins, the junior flight attendant, was trembling with rage. She knew who Maya was. She had seen the manifest. Sarah looked at the cockpit door. She knew interrupting the pilot during pre-flight checks was a fireable offense. She looked at Maya, who was turning a pale shade of grey. Sarah made a choice. She bypassed the interphone. She walked straight to the cockpit door and punched in the emergency entry code. The cockpit of a Boeing 777 is a sanctuary of order. It is a world defined by checklists, illuminated buttons, and the calm, rhythmic communication between pilots and air traffic control. Captain Marcus Sterling lived for this order. It was the antithesis of the chaos he had felt inside since his wife died. Here, at 30,000 feet, or even just prepping for it on the tarmac, he had control. Beside him sat First Officer David Chen, a sharp, ambitious pilot who was currently punching coordinates into the flight management computer. "V-speeds are set, Captain," David said, glancing at the rain sluicing down the windshield. "Tower says there's a break in the weather, but it's closing fast. If we don't push in 10, we're looking at a ground hold." "Copy that," Marcus replied, his voice a low rumble. "Let's get the doors closed and get out of here. I have a precious cargo manifest today." He allowed himself a small, rare smile. He hadn't told David who was in seat 4A. He wanted to keep it professional, but the thought of Maya flying with him to London for Christmas warmed his chest. They were going to see the lights on Oxford Street. It was going to be their fresh start. Suddenly, the cockpit door buzzer shrieked, a harsh, rhythmic alarm that indicated an emergency access request. David jumped. "What the hell? We haven't even pushed back!" Before Marcus could reach for the intercom to deny entry, the keypad lock clicked, the heavy reinforced door swung open, and Sarah Jenkins stumbled in. This was a severe breach of post-9/11 security protocols. A flight attendant entering the cockpit uninvited during pre-flight was unheard of. "Sarah?" Marcus twisted in his seat, his brow furrowed. "What are you doing? You know the protocol." "Captain, I'm sorry," Sarah gasped, her face pale, her chest heaving. "I tried the interphone, but Brenda..." "She cut me off. You have to come out." "Is it a security threat?" David asked, his hand hovering near the transponder dial, ready to squawk 7500 for a hijacking. "No. Yes. I don't know," Sarah stammered, tears streaming down her face. "It's a medical emergency. A passenger. A little girl in 4A. Marcus went rigid. The blood drained from his face so fast it left him dizzy. The cockpit, usually so expansive, suddenly felt like a coffin. 4A, Marcus whispered. "She needed her pills," Sarah rushed on, her words tumbling over each other. "Heart medication, digoxin. Brenda. She thought the girl was an addict or something. She took them. She poured them on the floor, Captain. She crushed them." Marcus unbuckled his 5-point harness with a violent click. "The girl is on the floor," Sarah sobbed. "She's turning blue. She can't breathe." Time stopped at the sound of the rain, the hum of the avionics, the chatter of the radio. It all vanished. All Marcus could hear was the thumping of his own heart, echoing the irregular, failing rhythm of his daughter's. "Captain?" David asked, alarmed by the look in Marcus's eyes. It wasn't fear. It was a dark, primal fury that made the younger pilot recoil. Marcus didn't answer. He stood up, towering in the small space. He didn't grab his hat. He didn't grab his jacket. He moved with the terrifying speed of a man whose world is on fire. "David," Marcus said, his voice sounding like grinding granite. "Tell Tower we are cancelling takeoff clearance. Tell them we have a medical emergency and a crew disruption. Captain, we'll lose our slot." "I said cancel the damn clearance!" Marcus roared, the sound vibrating off the instrument panels. He pushed past Sarah, squeezing through the narrow doorway of the cockpit. He moved through the forward galley, pushing aside the curtain. The scene in the first-class cabin was a tableau of horror. Passengers were standing, craning their necks. The murmur of confusion was loud. And there, in the aisle next to seat 04A, was a small, crumpled figure. Maya was curled into a ball, clutching her chest. Her skin, usually a vibrant, warm brown, was ashen and grey. Her lips had a terrifying bluish tint. She was gasping, short, shallow rasps of air that sounded like a fish drowning on land. Her eyes were wide, fixed on the ceiling, filled with a panic that no child should ever know. Standing over her was Brenda Miller. She wasn't helping. She was holding a trash bag, looking annoyed, trying to usher people back to their seats. "Folks, please sit down," Brenda was saying, her voice tight with frustration. "It's just a panic attack. We're handling it. We need to clear the aisle for departure." Mr. Thorne, the businessman from 5C, was on his knees next to Maya, holding her hand, checking her pulse. "Her pulse is thready. She needs oxygen. Do you hear me?" he shouted at Brenda. "Get the oxygen tank." "I am not authorizing medical equipment for a tantrum," Brenda snapped back, turning her back on the dying girl. "She needs to calm down." That was the moment Marcus stepped into the cabin. He didn't run. He stalked. His presence was so intense, so commanding, that the passengers near the front grew instantly silent. The aura of command that came from 4 stripes on a uniform shoulder was powerful, but the aura of a father protecting his child was unstoppable. Brenda turned, sensing the shift in the atmosphere. She saw the captain. She smiled, relieved. "Captain Sterling," she said, smoothing her skirt. "So glad you're here. We have a disruptive passenger in 4A. Refusing crew instructions, faking a medical issue to delay the flight. I was just about to call security to have her removed so we can meet our slot time." Marcus didn't look at Brenda. He looked past her, straight at the floor. "Maya!" he choked out. He dropped to his knees, ignoring the expensive uniform trousers hitting the dirty carpet. He scooped his daughter's head into his lap. Her skin was cold, clammy. "Daddy," Maya wheezed, her voice barely a whisper. I couldn't." "Stop her." "Shh, baby, shh," Marcus said, his hands trembling as he felt for her pulse. It was racing, tachycardia triggered by stress, compounding her congenital defect. Without the digoxin to regulate it, her heart was beating itself to exhaustion. "I'm here, I've got you." He looked up, his eyes locked onto Brenda. Brenda blinked. She looked at the captain, cradling the disruptive passenger. She looked at the tenderness. Then she heard the word. "Daddy." The color drained from Brenda's face, so completely she looked like a ghost. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. The bottle she was still holding, the empty amber bottle, slipped from her fingers and bounced on the carpet with a hollow thud. "Did you do this?" Marcus asked. His voice wasn't loud, it was quiet. Terrifyingly quiet. Brenda took a step back. I didn't know. "Captain, she didn't say she was family. She was acting suspicious." "Did you do this?" Marcus repeated, enunciating every syllable. "She refused to follow boarding protocol," Brenda shrieked, her defensive instincts kicking in, desperate to salvage the situation. "She demanded water. She had unidentified pills. I followed the safety manual. Section 4, paragraph 2, regarding unknown substances." Mr. Thorne looked up from Maya's other side. She crushed the girl's heart medication under her shoe. "Captain, I watched her do it. She smiled when she did it." Marcus looked at the crushed white powder, ground into the carpet near Brenda's heel. "Sarah!" Marcus barked, not taking his eyes off Brenda. Sarah appeared instantly at his side with the portable oxygen tank and a mask. She had anticipated the order. "I have the AED too, Captain." "Get her on oxygen. Now," Marcus ordered. He looked at Maya. "Breathe, baby. Sarah is going to help you. Daddy has to do one thing, just one thing." Maya nodded weakly, the oxygen mask fogging up with her shallow breaths. Marcus stood up. He rose to his full height of 6'2". He turned to the cockpit, where David was watching from the doorway, stunned. "David," Marcus said, his voice carrying through the silent cabin. "Shut it down." "Captain?" "Kill the engines," Marcus said. "Shut down the APU. Notify ground control. We are declaring a critical medical emergency and a crime scene. Request paramedics and airport police to the gate immediately." A crime scene, sir?" David asked. "Yes," Marcus said, turning back to face Brenda, who was now trembling against the galley wall. "Assault on a minor, endangerment of life, and interference with a flight crew member's family." The sound of a Boeing 777 powering down is eerie. The deep, pervasive thrum of the auxiliary power unit, APU, and the low whine of the engine spooling usually provide a comforting white noise. When they cut out, the silence is heavy. The lights in the cabin flickered once, then switched to the slightly dimmer battery power. The air vents stopped hissing. The silence amplified everything. The rain on the fuselage, the murmurs of the passengers, and the ragged breathing of Maya Sterling. Brenda Miller looked around the cabin, her eyes darting like a trapped animal. She had lost control. The one thing she prized above all else, authority, had been stripped away in seconds. "Captain, you can't be serious," Brenda hissed, trying to keep her voice low so the passengers wouldn't hear, though everyone was leaning in to listen. "You're grounding a transatlantic flight? Do you know how much this costs the airline? Hundreds of thousands of dollars. For For a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding. Marcus stepped closer. The space between them was charged with electricity. You destroyed a federally prescribed medication for a congenital heart defect. You watched a 12-year-old girl go into cardiac distress, and you called it a tantrum. I was protecting the safety of this flight, Brenda insisted, though her voice wavered. She was non-compliant. She is a child, Marcus yelled, his composure finally fracturing. The boom of his voice made Brenda flinch physically. She is my child. A collective gasp swept through the first-class cabin. Passengers in economy, sensing the commotion, were trying to push through the curtains. Ladies and gentlemen, Marcus turned to address the cabin, his voice raw but projecting clearly. This is Captain Sterling. I apologize for the delay. We are not going to London tonight. My daughter has been assaulted by a member of this crew, and her life is in danger. I will not fly this plane. Not with her in this condition, and not with that woman on board. He pointed a shaking finger at Brenda. Assault? Brenda scoffed, trying to rally. She looked at the passengers, seeking allies. I confiscated contraband. He's abusing his power because it's his bratty kid. This is nepotism. I'm going to report you to the Union, Marcus. You'll never fly again. Mr. Thorne stood up. He was a tall man in a tailored suit, with silver hair and the demeanor of someone who commanded rooms far more important than an airplane cabin. I don't think he's the one who needs to worry about the Union, Miss Miller, Thorne said calmly. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a business card. He handed it to Marcus. My name is Robert Thorne. I'm a senior district judge for the Southern District of New York, Thorne said. The cabin went deadly silent. I witnessed the entire event. I saw the young lady request water politely. I saw Ms. Miller refuse. I saw Ms. Miller physically snatch the medication and destroy it with what I would legally characterize as malicious intent. I am prepared to testify to that effect. Brenda's jaw dropped. She looked at the card in Marcus's hand, then at the judge. The blood that had drained from her face earlier did not return. And I got it on video. A teenager from seat 3F piped up, holding up an iPhone. Starting from when she grabbed the bottle. It's already on TikTok. You're viral, lady. Brenda looked at the phone. The realization of the modern world crashed down on her. It wasn't just her word against a child's anymore. The sound of sirens began to wail outside, rising above the drumming rain. Blue and red lights flashed against the cabin windows, illuminating the fear on Brenda's face. The jet bridge alarm beeped as the door was reopened from the outside. Paramedics! A voice shouted. 3 EMTs in high-visibility jackets rushed onto the plane, carrying heavy trauma bags and a stretcher. Where is she? The lead paramedic shouted. Here, Sarah called out from the floor. 12-year-old female, history of congenital heart defect, missed dose of digoxin, high stress, suspected atrial fibrillation. Marcus stepped back to let them work, but he kept a hand on Maya's ankle, needing the physical connection. He watched as they listened to her chest, their faces grim. Pulse is 160 and irregular, the medic said. BP is dropping. She's going into shock. We need to move her now. Is there any of the medication left? No, Marcus said, his voice breaking. It was destroyed. The medic looked at the crushed white powder on the floor, then at Brenda. He shook his head in disgust. Load her up. We need to get her to Jamaica Hospital. Cardiac unit. As they lifted Maya onto the stretcher, she reached out a weak hand. Daddy. I'm coming, baby. I'm right here, Marcus said, grabbing his jacket. He turned to David, the first officer. The plane is yours, David. Do the shutdown checklist. Cooperate with the police. You go, Captain, David said firmly. I'll handle everything here. Marcus turned to follow the stretcher, but Brenda stepped in his path. She was desperate now, realizing the walls were closing in. "Marcus, wait," she pleaded, grabbing his arm. "Please, if you leave, they'll cancel the flight. The airline will fire me. I have a pension. I have 20 years. We can fix this. I'll apologize. I'll buy her new pills. Just don't let them take me off." Marcus looked at her hand on his uniform sleeve. He looked at it like it was a venomous spider. He slowly peeled her fingers off. "You didn't just destroy pills, Brenda," Marcus said, his voice cold as the winter rain outside. "You tried to destroy a life because it made you feel powerful. You wanted to ground someone? Well, congratulations. You just grounded us all." He leaned in close. "Pray she survives," he whispered. "Because if she doesn't, I won't just take your job. I will take your freedom." Marcus turned and ran down the jet bridge after his daughter. Behind him, 2 Port Authority police officers stepped onto the plane. They weren't smiling. "Brenda Miller?" one of the officers asked, scanning the cabin. Brenda stood frozen in the galley, the flashing lights from the police cars outside reflecting in her eyes. "That's her," Judge Thorne said, pointing a finger. "She's the one you want." The officer approached Brenda, pulling a pair of metal handcuffs from his belt. The metallic clink was the loudest sound in the silent airplane. "Brenda Miller, please place your hands behind your back," the officer said. "You can't arrest me," Brenda screeched, backing away. "This is my aircraft. I am the purser." "Not anymore, ma'am," the officer said, spinning her around and snapping the cuffs on her wrists. "You are being detained for reckless endangerment and assault. You have the right to remain silent." As Brenda was marched off the plane, protesting and crying, the passengers didn't look away. They didn't sympathize. Slowly, one person started to clap, then another. Then the whole cabin erupted in applause, not for the flight, but for the justice they had just witnessed. But in the ambulance, speeding away from Terminal 4, there was no applause. There was only the scream of the siren, the beep of the heart monitor, and Marcus holding his daughter's hand, praying to a God he hadn't spoken to in years that this wasn't the end. The waiting room of the cardiac intensive care unit at Jamaica Hospital Medical Center was a purgatory of beige walls and buzzing fluorescent lights. It smelled of antiseptic and stale coffee, a scent that would forever remind Marcus Sterling of the worst nights of his life. He sat in a hard plastic chair, his elbows on his knees, his head in his hands. He was still wearing his pilot's uniform, though the jacket was crumpled on the seat next to him, and his tie hung loose around his neck. To the nurses and passing orderlies, he looked like a man who had crash-landed. It had been 4 hours. 4 hours since the ambulance doors slammed shut. 4 hours since he watched a team of doctors swarm his little girl, cutting away her favorite blue dress to attach electrodes to her small chest. A doctor pushed through the swinging double doors. Dr. Emily Vance was young, tired, but had kind eyes. She scanned the room and walked straight to Marcus. Marcus shot up. "Is she?" "She's stable, Captain," Dr. Vance said gently, holding up a hand. Marcus let out a breath that sounded like a sob. He collapsed back into the chair, the tension leaving his body so fast it left him weak. "But it was close," Dr. Vance continued, her expression hardening. "Very close. The lack of digoxin caused her heart rate to spiral into a rapid atrial fibrillation. That, combined with the extreme stress and panic, put a massive strain on her system. Her oxygen levels dropped dangerously low. We've got her sedated now to let her heart rest. We've administered the medication intravenously, and her rhythm is normalizing." "Can I see her?" Marcus asked, his voice cracking. "In a moment. But I have to ask you, Captain. The police report said her medication was destroyed forcibly." Marcus nodded, his jaw tightening. by a flight attendant. She threw it on the floor and crushed it. Dr. Vance shook her head, a look of pure disgust crossing her face. In my 10 years of medicine, I have never... Well, you should know that if she had arrived 20 minutes later, we might be having a very different conversation. That woman didn't just inconvenience you. She almost killed your daughter. As Marcus processed this, his phone buzzed in his pocket. Then it buzzed again. And again. Within seconds it was vibrating continuously, a manic rhythm against his leg. He pulled it out. He had 42 missed calls, 100 text messages. He opened his news feed, and his breath caught in his throat. The video was everywhere. The teenager on the plane, the one in seat 3OF, hadn't just posted it to TikTok. They had live-streamed the aftermath. But someone else had captured the incident itself. A snippet of video, shaky but clear, showed Brenda's face twisted in a sneer. Heart medicine? You're 12. Probably some ADHD pills. The audio was crisp. The sound of the bottle hitting the floor was audible. The image of Brenda grinding her heel into the carpet was in high definition. The hashtag #FlightAto8 was the #1 trending topic on X, formerly Twitter, in the United States, the UK, and Canada. Ophia Brenda was #2. Marcus clicked on a YouTube link a friend had sent him. A popular commentary channel with 5 million subscribers had already uploaded a video titled "Evil Flight Attendant Tries to End Child. Karma Hits Instantly." The video already had 1.2 million views in 2 hours. The comments were a wall of fire. User Sarah J88. I'm a nurse. That is attempted murder. Digoxin is serious stuff. You don't mess with heart meds. User Frequent Flyer Mike. I've flown with Brenda Miller before. She was rude to my elderly mother. Glad she's finally getting exposed. User Orse Justice for Maya. The way the dad grounded the plane, though. Legend. That is a father protecting his cub. User 8 Lawyer. I hope that family owns the airline by the time this is over. It wasn't just social media. Major news outlets were picking it up. CNN had a breaking banner. Pilot grounds transatlantic flight after crew member allegedly destroys child's life-saving medication. Marcus turned his phone off. He didn't care about the viral fame. He didn't care about the millions of strangers screaming for blood. He only cared about the little girl lying in a hospital bed a few feet away. Dr. Vance led him into the room. Maya looked tiny in the hospital bed, hooked up to a spiderweb of tubes and wires. The rhythmic beep, beep, beep of the heart monitor was the most beautiful music Marcus had ever heard. He pulled a chair up to the bedside and took her small hand in his. It was warm again. I'm sorry, baby, he whispered, burying his face in the mattress. I'm so sorry I wasn't back there with you. The door opened softly behind him. Marcus expected a nurse. Instead, 2 men in dark suits walked in. They didn't look like doctors. They looked like sharks in Italian wool. Captain Sterling, the taller one said. He had slicked back grey hair and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. I'm Richard Sterling. No relation, huh? And this is Mr. Cole. We represent the legal department of Global Airways. Marcus didn't stand up. He didn't let go of Maya's hand. He just turned his head, his eyes burning with a cold, dangerous intensity. Get out, Marcus said. Captain, please, Richard said, stepping closer, lowering his voice to a sympathetic whisper. We are here to help. The airline is devastated by this incident. We want to ensure Maya gets the best care possible. We've already arranged for a private suite, fully paid for by Global Airways. I have insurance, Marcus said. Get out. Captain, we need to discuss the optics, Mr. Cole chimed in. The video is damaging, very damaging. For the airline, and for you." Marcus stood up then. He moved slowly, deliberately. "For me?" "Well, yes," Cole said, adjusting his glasses. "Grounding a fully loaded 707 is a drastic measure, Captain. Millions in losses, fuel dumping, crew timeouts, passenger compensation. Some might argue it was an emotional reaction, not a procedural one, a misappropriation of company assets." Marcus laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. "Are you threatening me while my daughter is lying there?" "We're not threatening," Richard said smoothly, pulling a thick envelope from his jacket. "We're proposing a solution, a settlement. Global Airways is prepared to offer you a very generous severance package and a settlement for Maya's distress. $2 million. Immediate deposit." He placed the envelope on the side table. "In exchange," Richard continued, "you sign a non-disclosure agreement. You issue a statement saying it was a misunderstanding, that Ms. Miller was following safety protocols but made a mistake in judgment. We let the news cycle die down. Brenda is fired quietly next month. Everyone wins." Marcus looked at the envelope. $2 million. It was a lot of money. It could pay for Maya's college. It could pay for the best doctors. He looked at Maya. He remembered the fear in her eyes when she said, "I couldn't stop her." He looked back at the lawyers. "You think you can buy me?" Marcus asked softly. "Everyone has a price, Captain." Cole smirked. Marcus picked up the envelope. He weighed it in his hand. Then he tore it in half, then in quarters. He threw the confetti of legal paperwork into the trash can next to the biohazard bin. "My price," Marcus said, leaning into Cole's face, "is Brenda Miller in a prison cell. My price is a public apology from the CEO of Global Airways. And my price is you two getting the hell out of my daughter's room before I call the police and have you arrested for harassment." The lawyer's smiles vanished. "You're making a mistake, Sterling," Richard said coldly. "We can make your life very difficult. You'll never fly again." "I don't need to fly to fight you," Marcus said. "Now get out." While Marcus was holding the line at the hospital, Brenda Miller was sitting in an interrogation room at the JFK Port Authority Police Precinct. She was no longer the pristine, commanding senior purser. Her blonde hair was disheveled, her mascara had run down her cheeks in jagged black streaks, and her uniform was wrinkled. She had been crying for hours, not out of remorse, but out of self-pity. "I want my lawyer," she demanded for the 10th time, slamming her handcuffed hands on the metal table. "Do you know who I am? I am a senior employee of Global Airways. I have union protection." The door opened. It wasn't a union rep. It was a court-appointed public defender, a tired-looking man named Gary. "Your union isn't coming, Miss Miller," Gary said, sitting down and opening a file. "I just got off the phone with them. They are declining to provide counsel. They cited the gross misconduct clause in your contract, specifically the part about criminal acts." "Criminal acts?" Brenda shrieked. "I did my job. That child was a security risk." "The district attorney disagrees," Gary said, sliding a sheet of paper across the table. "They are charging you with reckless endangerment in the first degree, assault of a minor, and destruction of prescription property. And because this happened on an aircraft, the feds are looking at it too. Interference with a flight crew member. That's a felony." Brenda stared at the paper. The words swam before her eyes. "Felony. Prison. Up to 7 years. This is a mistake," she whispered. "Captain Sterling put them up to this. He hates me. He's trying to ruin me because I didn't treat his princess like royalty." "Ms. Miller, there is video," Gary said, rubbing his temples. "You stepped on the pills. You laughed. The judge saw it. Millions of people have seen it. You need to wake up. We need to discuss a plea deal." No, Brenda stood up, knocking her chair back. I will not plead guilty. I am the victim here. I was harassed by a passenger. I was intimidated by the captain. I'm going to sue them. I'm going to sue everyone. Meanwhile, at the Global Airways headquarters in a glass skyscraper in Manhattan, the mood was apocalyptic. The CEO, Jonathan Greaves, stood looking out the window at the rainy city. Behind him, the crisis management team was in a frenzy. Phones were ringing off the hook. Stock prices for Global Airways, GLO, had dropped 8% in pre-market trading. The statement is ready, sir, the PR director said, her voice shaking. We are distancing ourselves from Ms. Miller. We are praising Captain Sterling's quick thinking. No, Greaves said, turning around. He was a cold man, focused only on the bottom line. If we praise Sterling, we admit liability. If we admit liability, we open ourselves up to a class action lawsuit from every passenger on that plane who was delayed. We open ourselves to a massive payout to the girl. But the public is on his side, the PR director argued. The public has a short memory, Greaves snapped. We need to muddy the waters, release the personnel file on Sterling. He had that incident 3 years ago, didn't he? After his wife died? He took a leave of absence for mental health? Sir, that was grief, the HR director said. He was cleared to fly. It doesn't matter, Greaves said. Leak it. Unstable pilot snaps, grounds plane over minor dispute. Frame it as 2 employees fighting, not a villain attacking a child. Make it look like Sterling overreacted. If we can make him look volatile, we can justify not paying him the millions he's going to ask for. And Miller? Cut her loose, Greaves said, waving his hand dismissively. She's dead weight, but don't let her take us down with her. If she talks, bury her in legal fees. Back at the precinct, Brenda was using her one phone call. She didn't call her family. She called a number she had seen on late-night TV commercials. Saul and Associates. We fight for you. I want to sue for wrongful termination, Brenda hissed into the phone, her eyes wild. And defamation. Captain Sterling destroyed my reputation. I want to sue him for everything he has. The lawyer on the other end, a man who smelled blood in the water, listened. A pilot grounding a plane. A viral video. This is big, Ms. Miller. Very big. If we can prove he acted out of emotion and not protocol, we might have a case. We'll paint you as the strict enforcer of rules, and him as the emotional, unstable father who hijacked his own plane. Brenda smiled. It was a twisted, ugly smile. Yes, she said. He hijacked the plane. That's exactly what he did. I want him destroyed. The war was no longer just about a bottle of pills. It was about narratives. Global Airways was spinning a web of lies. Brenda was sharpening her knives, and Marcus Sterling, sitting by his daughter's bedside, had no idea that while he had won the battle in the air, the war on the ground was just beginning. 3 days later, the narrative had shifted. The internet, usually a force for instant justice, had become a battleground of bots, paid trolls, and confusion. Captain Marcus Sterling sat in his living room, the blinds drawn against the paparazzi camped on his lawn. On the coffee table lay a letter from the Federal Aviation Administration, FAA, and another from Global Airways. Both said the same thing. Immediate suspension, pending investigation. On the television, a morning talk show was airing an exclusive interview. The headline banner read, "Hero or Hijacker, the pilot who broke the rules." Brenda Miller sat on the studio couch. She looked nothing like the woman who had sneered at a child. She wore a soft pink cardigan, minimal makeup, and dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. Her lawyer, a shark named Saul Goodman, a real name often associated with legal maneuvering, used here for dramatic effect, sat beside her, looking grave. I was terrified. Brenda sobbed into the camera. He came out of the cockpit screaming. He was unhinged. I tried to follow the safety manual. Section 4 clearly states we must secure unknown loose substances. But he wouldn't listen. He used his daughter as a prop to intimidate me. I've served 20 years. I've never had a complaint. Liar, Marcus hissed at the screen. And now, the host asked sympathetically, you've been fired? Fired, doxed, threatened. Brenda wept. I just want my life back. I want people to know the truth. Captain Sterling has a history of mental instability. The airline knows it. They just won't say it. Marcus turned the TV off. The Global Airways smear campaign was working. They had leaked his bereavement leave file. They were painting him as a grieving, volatile widower who snapped under pressure. His phone rang. It was David Chen, his first officer. Captain, have you seen the news? David asked, his voice low. Management is pressuring me. They want me to sign a statement saying you were agitated before the flight. They're threatening my seniority. Don't do it, David, Marcus said, rubbing his temples. Tell the truth. That's all you have to do. I will, sir. But they're playing dirty. They're saying the girl didn't even need the pills. They found a medical expert who says digoxin isn't always critical for her condition. They're trying to say you staged the medical emergency to cover up your outburst. Marcus felt a cold rage settle in his stomach. They were going after Maya now. Later that afternoon, Marcus went to the hospital. Maya was awake, sitting up, watching cartoons. She looked better, though still pale. When she saw him, she turned off the iPad quickly. Hey, Bug, Marcus said, forcing a smile. What are you watching? Nothing, Maya said, looking down. Daddy, did I get you in trouble? Marcus's heart broke. No, baby. No, you did nothing wrong. I saw the lady on TikTok, Maya whispered. She said I was faking it. People in the comments said I'm a crisis actor. Marcus sat on the bed and pulled her into a hug. Listen to me. There are bad people in the world who tell lies to save themselves. But lies are like shadows. They disappear when you turn on the light. And we are going to turn on the biggest light they've ever seen. The door opened. It was Judge Robert Thorne. He was wearing a trench coat and carried a thick briefcase. Captain, Thorne said, his voice booming. I hope I'm not interrupting, but I saw that interview this morning. It made me sick to my stomach. You and me both, Judge, Marcus said. I made some calls, Thorne said, placing the briefcase on the table. I called in some favors with the district attorney's office, and I called a friend of mine. You might know the name Ben Crump. Marcus's eyes widened. Ben Crump was a real-life civil rights attorney known for taking on high-profile cases involving injustice. He's interested? Marcus asked. He's not just interested, he's furious. Thorne smiled grimly. But we have a problem. The airline has lost the cabin video footage from the security cameras. They claim a technical malfunction. Of course they did, Marcus scoffed. However, Thorne tapped his briefcase. They forgot about the cockpit voice recorder, the CVR. It records everything in the cockpit, but if the door is open, it picks up the forward galley too. The door was open, Marcus realized, when Sarah ran in, when I went out. Exactly. The National Transportation Safety Board, NTSB, has the recording. Global Airways tried to seal it, citing privacy. But I signed a court order an hour ago, unsealing it for the preliminary hearing tomorrow. Thorne looked at Maya. Tomorrow, young lady, Thorne said gently. We are going to ground that woman for good. The hearing was held at the federal courthouse in Brooklyn. It wasn't a full criminal trial yet. This was a grand jury proceeding to determine if there was enough evidence to indict Brenda Miller on felony charges. But because of the media storm, the room was packed. Brenda arrived with her lawyer, wearing her soft pink cardigan, looking frail and victimized. Global Airways executives sat in the back row, their expensive suits looking like armor. Marcus walked in holding Maya's hand. He wore his full captain's uniform, perfectly pressed, his 4 stripes gleaming under the courtroom lights. He didn't look unstable. He looked like a commander. The prosecution, emboldened by the public interest, didn't waste time. They called Sarah Jenkins, the junior flight attendant. "She destroyed the medication," Sarah testified, her voice trembling but clear. She laughed about it. She called Maya a brat. Brenda's lawyer, Saul, cross-examined her aggressively. "Ms. Jenkins, isn't it true you were recently passed over for a promotion that went to Ms. Miller? Isn't this just revenge?" "No," Sarah cried. "It's the truth." But the seed of doubt was planted. The jury looked unsure. "It was," he said. "She said." Then the prosecutor stood up. "Your Honor, we would like to enter evidence item 4B. The cockpit voice recorder audio from Flight 808. Brenda's lawyer jumped up. "Objection, hearsay. That audio is privileged." "Overruled," the judge said. "Play the tape." The courtroom went silent. The technician pressed play. First, there was the hum of the engines. Then, the sound of the cockpit door buzzer. "Captain, I'm sorry. Brenda, she cut me off. It's a medical emergency." Sarah's voice, frantic. Then, the sound of Marcus unbuckling, the sound of him rushing out. The audio quality shifted as the microphone picked up the sounds from the open door leading to the first-class cabin. "Folks, please sit down. It's just a panic attack." Brenda's voice, clear as day, dripping with annoyance. "Get the oxygen tank." Judge Thorne's voice. "I am not authorizing medical equipment for a tantrum." A gasp went through the courtroom. Brenda stiffened in her chair. Then came the moment that sealed her fate. "Did you do this?" Marcus's voice, low and terrifying. "She refused to follow boarding protocol. She had unidentified pills. She is a child. She is my child." And then, the faintest sound, but audible in the high-quality recording. A thud. The sound of the bottle hitting the floor. "Oops, looks like you lost them. Now sit down and shut up, or I will have security drag you off this plane." The recording ended. The silence in the courtroom was absolute. It was heavy, suffocating. Every eye turned to Brenda Miller. She wasn't crying anymore. Her face was pale, stripped of its mask. She looked small, mean, and guilty. The Global Airways executives were already texting on their phones, frantically trying to cut ties. "Ms. Miller," the judge said, staring over his glasses. "Do you have any explanation for that recording?" Brenda stood up. She looked at the jury. She looked at Marcus. And then the pressure broke her. "I was tired," she screamed, her voice cracking into a shrill shriek. "I am sick of these entitled passengers. Every day it's, 'Fetch me this. Help me with my bag. I am the purser. I am in charge.' That little brat looked at me like she deserved special treatment just because her daddy flies the plane. I wanted to teach her a lesson." She realized what she had said. She clamped her hand over her mouth. "Let the record show," the judge said coldly, "that the defendant has admitted to malicious intent." The fallout was swift, brutal, and absolute. Brenda Miller. The jury indicted her on all counts in less than 20 minutes. 2 months later, she accepted a plea deal to avoid a 20-year sentence. She was sentenced to 5 years in federal prison for reckless endangerment and interference with a flight crew. She lost her pension. She lost her home to pay her legal fees. In prison, she was assigned to the laundry detail, washing the clothes of others with no authority over anyone. Global Airways. The recording proved they had lied about the unstable pilot. The stock price cratered, losing 40% of its value in a week. The CEO, Jonathan Greaves, was forced to resign in disgrace. To avoid a massive civil rights lawsuit from Ben Crump, the new board of directors settled with Marcus Sterling for $15 million on Marcus and Maya. Marcus never flew for Global Airways again. He didn't have to. With the settlement money, he started his own aviation school, focusing on training pilots from underprivileged backgrounds. He named it the Elena Sterling Academy, after his late wife. Maya recovered fully. The stress had been hard on her heart, but with the best doctors money could buy, she grew stronger. She didn't shy away from the world. She started a YouTube channel talking about living with heart defects, inspiring thousands of other kids. 1 year later, Marcus and Maya were at the airport. They weren't flying global. They were flying on a private charter to London, the trip they had missed. As they walked across the tarmac, Maya looked up at the massive plane. "Are you scared, Dad?" she asked. Marcus looked at the sky, clear and blue. He looked at his daughter, vibrant and alive. "No, sweetie," he smiled, squeezing her hand. "I'm the captain, and you're my co-pilot. We've got clear skies ahead." And that is how a father's love grounded a plane and destroyed a tyrant. Brenda thought her badge gave her the power to play God, but she forgot that karma flies faster than any jet. She lost her freedom, her career, and her reputation, proving that no matter how high you fly, you can always crash and burn if you lose your humanity. What do you think? Did Brenda deserve 5 years in prison, or should it have been longer? And would you have grounded the plane if you were Marcus? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story, please smash that like button, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a daily dose of drama and justice. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.